All right, so welcome to a session here on Food X. And as you guys know, we're really jumping into the science of food. And one of the things that we really wanted to explore was how taste preservation was being done with a lot of innovation in food development around the world. So, of course, as you know, we've got three experts here, and I want to kind of welcome each of you, Abigail, Tom, and Eran. Great to have you.
Great to be here.
Excellent. So virtual, I'm going to catch each of you in probably your home. Tom, where are you located today?
I'm in Indianapolis here at the Epogee Worldwide headquarters, as it were.
All right.
So great to be with you.
Excellent. How about you, Abigail?
I'm talking to you from a very cold and snowy suburbs of Chicago, not far from our Global Innovation Center here for Tate and Lyle. Currently at home.
Very cool. And you, Eran?
I'm talking to you from Petah Tikva, which is near Tel Aviv. The weather is wonderful. It's summery, 27 degrees C.
I like it. Okay.
Highly recommended.
Let's just go ahead. I love it. Rub it in there, Eran. Just keep on. Let's jump into a little bit about each of your companies. Eran, let's stay with you. Kind of give me a little bit of a background on what you guys do there.
DouxMatok has developed a platform of flavor delivery which is more efficient. So you need less of a flavor to get more taste. So you can use 30-40% less sugar and you get the same sweetness, and it's sugar at the end of the day.
Yeah, I like it. Okay, nice tech. Now we're going to dive into that. Abigail, how about you? Give me a little bit of a backgrounder for you guys.
So people probably know Tate & Lyle as a global food and beverage solutions provider, providing ingredient solutions to our customers around the world. I work on the Sweetener platform specifically, and the technology related to today's discussion is very much around allulose and an ability to take sugar and calories out of the food and beverages that our customers are creating, and working with our customers obviously every day with that goal.
Very cool. And Tom, Epogee, a little bit about what you guys are doing?
Yeah, Epogee really helps solve one of the biggest conundrums in food, which is how to dramatically lower calories without affecting taste. So we have a fat technology, alternative fat technology, that you can substitute regular fat on a one-to-one basis. Fat has 9 calories per gram, and EPG has 0.7. But most importantly, we don't affect taste at all. So you get all the flavor delivery of fat with none of the issues around an ingredient affecting the overall taste.
I like it. I like it. Well, we're going to definitely get a chance to dive in. Abigail, I want to start with you. When you look at some of the society indicators that are kind of affecting food, and you guys, what kind of R&D, because obviously with your company, you're diving into a lot of this R&D through what you're seeing in consumer trends. Is there anything specific that you guys have picked up on that says, hey, we other than the common one of reducing sugars, that you guys are really taking to heart in the R&D for what you guys are doing there at your company?
Yeah, I think it's obviously the fundamental starting point for the solutions, then the new products that we create, and then how those solutions are applied to the end product. So the key pieces for us, to your point, and particularly for me, obviously working on the Sweetener platform, and I wake up every morning thinking about how we can take sugar and calories out of the world's diet. That's really the purpose of me and my team. So it's really the growing consumer awareness of sugar and calories in a product and on the label. Clearly that varies by country, by region, in terms of the level of importance consumers put to that. But it's really, I would say, a universal fact and a continuing trend that will be with us, I believe, for a long time to come. There's obviously the growing broader health and wellness trend. So it's not just what you take out of a product, but also what you put back in.
Right.
And linked to that very much is obviously clean label. It's a long-standing trend, and again, I believe that one's here to stay. And clearly, these are also influenced by what's going on in the world of regulatory. So whether that be labels, warnings on front of pack, as well as sugar taxes. So it's really, I would say, a sort of a mix of elements that come into thinking about then how we create ingredients, what those ingredients should do in terms of the functionality to effectively meet the needs of the consumer given those trends, but ultimately delivering on why consumers choose a particular food and beverage, which in the end comes back to taste.
So Abigail, I want to kind of touch on that point because preserving taste is a big factor in consumer selection process. We've seen a lot of trends moving toward natural sugars, kind of this innovative approach toward, I won't say functional, but there are some aspects of ingredients that are going toward that functional delivery in some of these CPG and specialty products. Have you seen any trends in that area around the sugar side of things?
Absolutely. And I think as you see that need and demand expand from our customers, it's definitely a need beyond beverage, beyond where sweetness delivery alone is not enough. So that the other functional benefits that sugar brings, sugar in itself is an amazing ingredient. Clearly, it provides, texture, browning, caramelization, just that flavor, mouthfeel.
Yeah.
And just replacing sugar with sweetness just isn't enough. So anything we can do to bring back that more real sugar experience is what I think will help consumers to make those healthier choices and not have to give up on taste.
No, I think that's a perfect point. And of course, sugars and fat are two of the best things to use in terms of taste perceptions and how consumers are really kind of adapting to certain kinds of foods. So you guys are all on the same page here. Tom, let's go into a little bit about your technology because and I just want to make sure I had this number right. Technology that helps reduce fat 92% in calories without losing flavor. Tell me how in the world you're going to do that.
Yeah. I'll unpack that, and we play right along with sugar reduction, and it's, I guess we suggest why not optimize your nutritional panels and reduce calories where you can without affecting taste, texture, functionality, and that's what EPG does. I'll be real simple. We take fat, which is two parts, glycerol and fatty acids, and we break it apart. We insert a food-grade propoxyl link in there, and we put it back together. And now what happens is that for every fat gram that we replace, you save 92% of those calories. Fat is 9 calories per gram, highest, over double the caloric content of carbohydrates. Our product, EPG, is 0.7, so that's the 92% reduction. Mm-hmm. In a finished product, if you just replaced a fat system in a high-fat product, potato chips, we can lower the caloric content of a chip by 45%, total caloric content. So that's how it works. The replaced fat is a 92% reduction, and then its impact on the overall caloric content is the makeup of the food matrix. Our early adopters are all replacing sugar and fat. So you're getting an ice cream with about 70% caloric reduction, but premium mouthfeel, premium texture, and all the creaminess of a premium ice cream, but from a healthy ice cream. Same thing you're going to see in chocolate confectionery. That's what it is. It's really quite simple. It's a new molecule, but it's created from fat and acts just like fat.
Interesting. So obviously with your product, you're kind of targeting into those decadent elements of our food system and all the things that consumers love to enjoy. Is there any basis with the technology that you guys currently have where you can control the mechanism itself? Mainly because some people look at fats as nutritional value. If you go into the keto diets or some of those directions, people are actually chasing fat. So with that kind of scenario, does the technology have the ability to adjust in the levels of fat performance as an ingredient? Or anything like that going on in your tech?
I'm not entirely certain what the question is trying to get at. We can adjust fat anywhere up to. We have actually one product, a nut butter, a customer, with 100% EPG. That's its fat system. But in general, it would be somewhere between 65 and 80% fat replacement, just to optimize your caloric content. At some point, it will affect the taste or excuse me, the texture of the product. You can put too much EPG in.
Gotcha. Okay.
And you'll know it. You've gone too far. Dial it back a couple of degrees, and you've got this optimum caloric reduction without affecting taste, texture, or functionality at all. In addition, it's not all permissible indulgence where we're targeting. Plant-based is deeply looking at this as a replacement for palm, as a way of delivering more flavor in plant-based meats and things like that. So you're right, it does tend to skew towards permissible indulgence, but it also works in products that I don't think the consumer would describe as indulgent.
Yeah, well, I think if you're going after the potential replacement of palm oil, that would be a huge market for you, because that obviously has so many variables in terms of how it's being used in today's food system, especially like you mentioned, especially in the plant-based side, and with companies like Beyond Meat and many that are trying to copy what they're doing. There's a lot of those kind of ingredients. Eran, let's jump to you. Talk a little bit about your taste receptor research that you guys are doing. I'm kind of curious about that. How does that work?
I wouldn't define it exactly the way you do. What we try and achieve is very much in the direction that Abigail described. We've come to the conclusion that really the best way, if not eventually the only way to cut sugar, especially where children are concerned, is by using sugar. Sugar has all these functionalities that Abigail talked about. Because we are 99.9% sugar, we retain most of those. So we don't have a new molecule. And we have, I would say, a coupling. We take sugar and a carrier. And the carrier can be a mineral, can be a fiber, or even a protein. And those actually describe Gen 1, Gen 2, and Gen 3 of the Incredo Sugar, which is the brand name we gave to our sugar. Now, what happens is when you take a bite into a sugary cake, biscuit, whatever, most of the sugar in the product never sees a receptor. Never. And if you can change the proportion of flavor that will hit the receptor, I mean sugar, then you can actually enhance the perception of sweetness using less sugar. So we improve the delivery of the sugar to the receptors, and Incredo Sugar has a dissolution system which is faster and is happening for a longer time than normal sucrose sugar. And with the dissolution in your saliva, more sugar molecules arrive at the receptor, and you get this enhanced perception of sweetness, but it's sugar. It's 99.9% sugar.
So essentially,
we believe. Sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. You were saying something there.
We simply came to the conclusion that it's all about taste.
Yeah.
And COVID, in a way, has proven it, because we are living through a disconnect which is quite absurd. On the one hand, never like today do people consume so many, quote unquote, bad for you products. Too much sugar, too much fat. At the same time, obesity is the second worst contributor to serious illness from corona or death from corona.
Yeah.
So how do you explain this disconnect? Sugar makes you happy. Sugar is a consolation. Sugary products are just that. We try and make people happy, and at the same time we try and do, and that's the second half of the formula, exactly what Abigail said. You take out some, what do you bring in to replace it? And so we do a lot of work, including with Tate and Lyle products, fibers, to replace the sugar taken out, the bulk of the sugar taken out, with proteins and with fibers, all while making the indulgent taste, if not the same, even better. So that's where we are.
Sounds like a good head fake to me. So you're faking me out through my receptors to make me think I'm getting more sugar than I am, which is still making me happy, but keeping me a little bit healthier by just the amount of sugar I'm taking in. So very, very cool. So there was some, this next question is for the group. And we'll start with Abigail. But there was some recent research from McKinsey that basically was talking about how CPG and loyalty brands have kind of gone through this shock state. And what has been involved during, whether it's through COVID or just the trends that has developed because of the demographic shift between boomers and millennials, that we've seen a real movement for the first time of millennials trying to utilize either local or specialty products or artisanal products versus traditional CPG. I want to get you guys' response. Do you think this is something that is a temporary trend, or do you feel like this is something that really needs to be monitored and tracked as you do product development for companies around the world? Abigail, let's start with you.
Just thinking through that sort of, I guess, trend, and we do see it happening, and I think actually it's happened previously, but perhaps the last year has shed greater light on it and sort of heightened people's awareness of what's going on and where the growth is really coming from. It is true to say that there is growth coming from some of these brands more focused on provenance, the concern about where your food comes from, how it's made. But on the other hand, there is still a major role to be played by those established consumer goods companies. I think you're going to get to a place where those larger established brands will also be innovating more quickly. The last year has shown that you have to think quickly, you have to do things differently, and perhaps they're looking to those smaller local brands almost also for inspiration. But I think the two will be here to stay. It'll be interesting to see how those play out, where innovation happens in the market, beyond just, I would say, transparency, sustainability, authenticity, and how those can be applied from the small players to the larger ones, and whether you can do that with that authenticity and credibility.
Yeah. Anything to add there, Tom?
Yeah, it's an interesting topic. I look at this, I think people and businesses make logical decisions. So if you have built a very large billion-dollar brand, that's a big food company. It's probably been built off of salt, sugar, flour, It's certainly not marketed on its overall healthfulness, which just, these are huge, successful, important, big brands.
Yeah.
But like everything, you have ways you can be beaten. And I think it created a market for entrepreneurs and startups to come, and the soft underbelly was of big food, perhaps was to come after and market products on its healthfulness rather than its brand, as it were. So the big people are doing what you'd expect them to do. They're protecting their turf. They're improving their margins. Their innovation tends to be more around cost. I think they got to be very careful what they do with their brand. A startup is motivated by growth. It drives a lot of creativity, and the best way to get into the food space and beat the big players is to find a weakness. And I would say that what's happening is the startups and the innovators are competing on healthfulness a lot.
Yeah.
And it's not just all natural. I mean, there's a lot of technology coming into the world. I think we're going to have these trends. It's going to be a lot of fun. I think on both sides, big food and startup.
Yeah, for sure. Eran, with your side of the business, obviously sugar playing a big role in a lot of these companies that are coming out with new, whether it's specialty food products, artisanals. I don't know if this would play to you. Do you feel like this, if you look at how the market is kind of developing, especially around the millennials, which there's a ton of different food and fad diets that we're seeing from that particular category. Do you see this trend of kind of this division in the consumer demand affecting what you guys are doing?
The biggest challenge for us is to get our product in front of people, because everyone is claiming they make wonderful products with reducing sugar, with artificial, natural sweeteners, etc. When you actually come with a product which has none of those, has only half of the sugar, and people actually experience the product, that's when you can really start to make a difference. Because at the end of the day, better for you products will cost more. Fiber costs much more than sugar. And if you replace sugar with fiber, you're going to see the price go up. The only way which will convince a mother to spend on a package of, let's say, Petit Bear butter cookies, 20 cents more on a $2 pack is if her children would say, "Mommy, I prefer that one." And when they say that one, they point to the sugar-reduced version. And that's when the big change will happen. And what we are doing next month, we will launch in North America. That's our first launch. And we'll launch D2C. I was told by our people I mustn't say all this, tell all the story, but we'll launch through the Incredo website 2 great products and limited series. We are not going to be a CPG, but we've got to get these products in front of people. And when we do, the job gets to be much simpler.
Yeah.
Because when we work with the large CPGs, and we do, and I agree with Tom 100%, really, they run brands that are billions of dollars of wonderful income a year. They don't want to put those in danger. When we talk to them, it's very often they look at the price. And they say, anyway, our consumers, when it comes to better for you products, that part of the shelf is considered for the unfortunate. Because fortunate people, they eat the real thing, the real chocolate, the real full sugar chocolate. And to add a price challenge to the challenge of what seems to be, even today, the perception of better for you products is a challenge. And that's what we are trying to meet. So
Well, I like that.
I
think it's a good approach.
ever talk to people that haven't tasted our products.
But if I can follow on to that.
Sure, go ahead,
Paul,
Tom.
You know, I think what's interesting with Big Food is they're either going to lead in some of these arenas or they're going to have to follow because there's well-funded people. I mean, example, Halo Top ice cream completely upended the ice cream category in the United States. Mm-hmm. In 2 years, it went from a 1.6 market share to a 22.4 market share.
Huge.
From $18 million in revenue to $300 million in 2 years. Yeah. And, you know, kind of reestablished, or it established a whole section in the freezer section. So Big Food versus startup, you either lead or you're going to have to follow, because if you don't do something with improving the healthfulness of your products, someone's going to do it, and it's going to shake up a category.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's a very good example of how that might, and that kind of leads me to my next question, and that is when you look at the digital space of how millennials, Gen Z, they're getting their information about food, whether it's through Instagram or social media or various types of vehicles. And when you look at traditional Big Food and also these artisanal startups, a lot of these new age innovators coming from these combinators, it's really kind of a different shift in how these companies market. Now, I know that you guys are all in the ingredient-based business, but at the same time, you know, companies like Monsanto, BASF, you know, they really kind of went out into the market in their era, in that time. Obviously, they use TV, radio, print, et cetera. But today, all that's kind of changed. Have you guys thought about moving in that direction in terms of digital, in terms of kind of projecting out what you're doing to this new emerging market? Let's start with you, Abigail.
Yeah, so we've actually been doing that for some time with Allulose. So we talked a little bit about Allulose and this consumer journey and for whom it's most relevant. And I think we've talked to, you know, where there's a need, you're more likely to pay more. What we've actually found with Allulose is it's all about really belief. So we talk a lot about tasting is believing. As discussed previously across the different ingredient solutions and what those bring. Now, tasting is believing as long as there are products out there that you can actually go and try. Mm-hmm. So there's a balance between educating ahead of the market so that people are aware when they actually go into a store and pick up the product and look at the back of pack. But there's also a balance between then how you reinforce that. We've taken a lot of time and invested a lot of time in building our relationships with our customers so that we're actually doing this education effort together, so that we talk about our ingredient in a consistent way. We talk about that, you know, it's found in nature in figs and raisins. We talk about what it brings to a product. We talk about the label and we explain how that shows up on the label. The fact that now everything really joins up in terms of what Allulose brings. You know, it brings you that taste, that full sugar experience that you could never imagine getting. And by the way, there's no added sugar in the product that you're consuming in terms of how it labels, and it only has 1/10 of the calories. So really, it's about, to your point, how do we educate in the way in which consumers want to be educated and to learn and understand, and who do they look to for those facts and for that information, and how do you build that credibility and trust in the ingredient so that our customers, both large and small, see this as a tool that can help with sugar reduction, not just now, but also well into the future. So we work with sort of associations with a healthcare bias, really thinking to some of those target audiences that for whom allulose really can be a game changer. So we talked days of development to people with diabetes, and you talk about how you can have this sugar experience but with no effect on your blood glucose and then no need to dose insulin in response. That's a real game changer. So how do we make sure that we give that education through the right channels, to your point, and often in partnership so that we can amplify our message? No one's going to go and find today our Tate and Lyle sucralose in a bag on a shelf, allulose in a bag on a shelf, but they're going to see allulose out there in many other brands, and we need to talk about that in a consistent way and in a way that really builds that knowledge and understanding of what this ingredient brings for those that are wanting to be engaged and wanting to understand where their food comes from.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I think, that's the whole point, is that food journey or the story of how the product has come to light is a very important thing these days with this younger audience. Tom, when you look at that, trying to reach that new audience, essentially the millennials, which are now going to replace the boomers in terms of consumption by a large margin, you really have to have a unique message. How are you guys doing that over at Epogee?
Yeah. I listened to Abigail and longed for the days when I had a marketing budget. We're a startup, and we spend a great percentage of our cash, because that's the world I live in the world of trying to build the awareness of this ingredient.
Right.
So the only part I can comment on is what I've seen happen is emerging between ingredient companies not even worrying about consumer marketing and letting their brands do it. Now you're seeing the merging that I think Abigail speaks of. For us, our immediate situation is to make sure that we are very transparent. We have as many visitors to our website that are just pure consumers as we do as we have potential customers or brands. So the way we handle this is we do all of the sophisticated marketing techniques that you can do in B2B. We definitely integrate, and this omni-channel kind of omni-marketing idea is alive and well inside of Epogee, just on a more limited scale. Right. And I just think we cannot ever forget that consumers want to really understand. So we provide that content in our material.
So since we've seen digital kind of amping up in the millennial audience, which is essentially the evolving consumer here, at least here globally, really, what kind of digital activities are you guys doing to kind of set the tone of getting your product knowledge or information out into the space? That's the question.
We are, as I said, about to launch a D2C. The whole idea of D2C is to use the digital messaging in the most efficient way. My generation was looking for television and radio and God knows what. Today it's different, and spreading our message from the shelves is complicated. The shelves are overpopulated as they are today. So we need to find an alternative way, and that's the digital messaging, and we will go all full blast using those to get the message that we want to do. But I also think that much of it could emerge if we collaborate. Because whilst we shout our message digitally, we could similarly shout the EPG. DouxMatok Incredo Sugar doesn't work in beverages at all. DouxMatok works beautifully in fatty environment. So in future, And even now, we are trying to co-brand, use the digital to send a double message, meaning our message and messages of partners that are as us dependent on,
Right.
should I say, limited marketing budgets.
Yeah. Well, good. I mean,
Yeah,
I
it's all
think that's
about
the
how
approach.
it's all about how we can amplify together. Whoever your
Yeah.
partners
Yes.
are, we know our spend is nowhere near that of the big branded players, or
Yeah.
even some of the small branded players for that matter. So it's about being smart and amplify and partner where you can. And digital is the great equalizer.
Yeah, for sure.
As long as your message is relevant, there's a means to amplification.
Well, I think all your
Yes.
companies are very nimble and able to kind of take on this next layer. So it's going to be interesting. Listen, it's been great having you all on the session today. Thank you so much for your insights, Eran, Abigail, and Tom. It's been a pleasure meeting all of you. And thank you for stopping in. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Cheers.
All right, so thanks again for watching another session here on FoodX. Make sure and join us in the live chat. That's the best way to kind of communicate with us during the live event. So just shoot your questions and ideas over there. We'll be able to kind of address those, and stay tuned right here for more FoodX.